This is Dateline News and Conversation. I've got a great show tonight. It's a show that I'm really fired up about. My guest is my good friend, Eric Arnow from Thailand. And he does a video blog just about every day. It's called Inquiry and Thinking. He's really deep. It's easy to understand, but he's really deep and he's talking about things that really no one else can from his unique perspective of years as a Buddhist monk and his years living outside of the United States of America. Tonight, with Eric, we are going to explore the political rise of Donald Trump. I can't say that name without getting angry. And we're going to frame it not just as a political movement, but as a modern day personality cult. And then Eric is going to connect this to the broader the broader pattern of American hubris, analyzing Donald Trump and the United States military overestimation of its own capabilities in conflicts around the world. Eric, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Regis. Great to see you again.
It's always my friend. All right. I'm going to start out, and whatever inspired you to write this article and to title it the way you did.
The reason I do that, what my methodology, Regis, is to look at phenomena and try to understand the deeper meaning. There's a saying in Zen: look for the deeper meaning. So people look at the surface situation, but they don't ask what is actually going on. Let's go to the core of the issue and see if we can. The way to deal with a situation is you have to go to the core of the problem. And people dance around it because they just look at the individual phenomena. Trump did this or Trump did that, this kind of thing. But they don't try and tie it all together as a whole. And one of the exercises that we do in Zen is we try to look at things kind of like as a mosaic. You see this little piece here and here and here and there, but when you put it all together, now you have a vivid picture. Oh, this is what it is. And I start off by saying that the way to understand things is Confucius, who is another great philosopher and somewhat of a positive personality cult. He said the way towards wisdom is to call things by their true names. And I thought, what do we call Trump? He's a personality cult.
Let me jump in. The first I ever really remember hearing about Donald Trump was on that TV series, The Apprentice. And I never watched that. I think I have to admit I must have seen clips because I keep remembering he would always say at the end, "You're fired, you're fired," and I thought, wow, this TV show apparently was really popular. But that was my first glimpse of Donald Trump and my judgment and assessment of him at that time. He was a TV personality on, I don't know what you would call that show, but it did not reflect reality. So go ahead,
They call it
continue.
reality. They call it reality TV, but it's hard. It's the opposite of it, And just to give an inkling of what kind of a personality, he says, "I have power over you. You are fired." This is, it's a power trip. That
All
was the
right, so
first.
so
Uh,
Eric, he's a personality. There's no doubt about it. A TV personality. He obviously was a real estate personality, although he supposedly had several failures and bankruptcies, but you're calling it a personality cult. Now, you're going to have to define that for me.
Right. So a personality cult is, I'll just, speaking directly in this moment, there have been various personality cults throughout history. So I give an example that there's good ones and there's bad ones. Good ones are like famous religious figures. So you have somebody like Jesus, who he had a huge impact on his time. He gave food to the hungry. He healed people. He gave them some ideas about love, which had not been considered. He stood up to authority. And as a result, he developed a great following to this day. And that's a positive example of where you can say, Jesus is my personal savior. This is a personality cult. Muhammad is the same kind of thing. There's no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. He's the guy, got to believe in him. And if people take that step to do it, it can give order to their life by kind of aligning themselves with this big personality. In
So, Eric,
Buddhism, yeah.
Eric, while you're talking about this, I mean, you talk about Jesus, you talked about Muhammad. Uh,
Mhm.
you know what came to my mind immediately, and I don't know if everybody will remember this, but Jim Jones. Would you
Well,
would you in,
I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that.
all
I'm
right.
giving you the good news. There's Jesus, there's Muhammad, people like Confucius, the Buddha. They had a positive role model, but there's the negative aspect, and there's two that I give examples of in my discussion. I'll start off with Jim Jones since you brought it up. Here's this guy. He lives in San Francisco. He kind of ministers to this down and out community of people who are economically disadvantaged and so on, and he develops this following, and finally says, everybody, we need to just leave the United States. We need to get out of here, and we're going to create our own wonderful world. And they go to Guyana. I think it was Guyana, and I was in San Francisco at the time that this all came down. And this is where the expression "drinking the Kool-Aid" comes in. You know, so he takes these people to Guyana, and sure enough, it starts becoming a complete control trip where people, from instead of being this benevolent figure, now it's a totalitarian system where if you don't do what he tells you to do, you're going to be punished. Bad things are going to happen. And then what happens, because these kinds of things are going on, there was a California state representative, or I believe it was, he went down there to see what's going on. They kill him, and then, because the pressure is mounting on his community, he says to everybody, okay, that's it. It's over. We are all going to have to drink cyanide-laced Kool-Aid, and you're going to die in 5 seconds, but it'll be okay. So this is an example of where somebody gets such great control over people that there were only like 5 people who said, what the F? We got to get out of here. This guy is crazy. He's going to kill us all. So that's an example of a negative personality cult. And the other example, probably the most famous one, is Hitler, who got and Hitler. And this is very important because when Hitler came to power, he developed this big following of people, and eventually, and he was only a corporal in World War I. So he was not a great, military officer or anything, but he got to the point where he had such a control over the mind of people in Germany that he was giving generals orders, and because he had this inflated view of himself, and he said to the generals and the soldiers, "You're not going to take a loyalty oath to the German Constitution. You're taking an oath to me. I am der Führer. I'm the leader. You must follow me." So these are examples of positive and negative personality
Let
cults.
me let me uh, let me ask a couple of questions there, both about the positive cult leaders and the negative ones. Would you say that, like in uh, the modern era, people like Mussolini and Stalin would be cult leaders?
There's certainly elements of that. Now, the situation with Stalin, people accused him of a personality cult. I've heard different things where he said, please don't do that, but there were people surrounding him that maybe wanted him to do that. It's hard. I don't know exactly what that was about. Did he encourage that, or did other people, encourage it? But he had a very strong personality, obviously. I mean, how do you pull a country that's been attacked by the biggest military in the history of the world? How do you survive that? And people said they sang songs about him, Comrade Stalin. We're fighting for Stalin. So he did engender tremendous loyalty.
Yeah.
So
Now, I guess it'd be the positive side, depending on how you look at it. What about the Pope of Rome in Catholicism? Is that, I mean, you talked about Jesus being a personality and a cultic following. What about the Pope in Rome?
well, the Pope in Rome certainly wants to be. Now that's interesting because it's not like a figure because it's the position where they create a, you could say, a cult. Forgive the people who are Roman Catholics here, but the Pope has this special status where people have to follow him. He becomes what is it, infallible. So
Infallible.
infallibility. That is a classic symptom of a personality cult.
Yeah. And of course, one could talk about John Paul II, the Polish Pope. Uh, they canonized him before his body was even cold. That was shocking. It always takes, sometimes hundreds of years before all the investigations are done and proof of miracles. But all of a sudden, after this guy dies, boom, there's miracles happening all over, and they make him a saint. And then you have Francis. I think the church created a personality cult out of this good shepherd Francis. Uh, anyway, you don't have to comment on that. I'm just, some of this stuff is turning me on, Eric. It's thinking
Well,
back about.
yeah, let me comment on it. That I think what you're talking about there in terms of the Catholic Church, and forgive me, I'm being probably extremely presumptuous because I'm not Catholic. But I think that because religion in general and the church in particular has been subject to tremendous pressure, there's been scandals and all those sorts of things, and people are becoming less religious. They say, you know, the Virgin Mary. I mean, come on, the Virgin Mary and all this, so the institution of the church they become anxious, and so they create this situation where they kind of overcompensate for their actual lack of credibility, you might say.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've pretty much established what a cult is, a personality cult is, both positive and negative. Uh, now let's go back to the hero of this conversation, uh, Donald J. Trump. Talk to me about how his personality and his appeal all led to, geez, what we're seeing. Well, not just today, but in his first term as well. He was number 45. Now he's 47. The same thing, I think, was existent in both of these administrations. Your thoughts on his background and appeal and how that led to this?
Hmm. Well, we have to look at the context, the social context. The United States is a declining empire. The society is fraying more and more and more. As who is it? George Carlin said, a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago And people understand that more and more, and they're looking for answers. So they latched on to somebody like Bernie Sanders, but he didn't quite fit the bill. And then you get this guy, Donald Trump, who is a billionaire, but he's talking, um, saying, criticizing the system, and I'm going to clean up the swamp. And everybody says, yeah, yeah, let's clean up the swamp, get rid of those guys. And so he appealed to that kind of desperate um, psychological state that many Americans are in. Now, they're not able to look at things critically. They're looking for an easy answer. They're looking for some guy who's going to fix their problem. And instead of taking responsibility as citizens to say, we've got a screwed up system and we as people have to get together and fix this. There's nobody who's going to fix it but ourselves. No, Donald Trump is going to fix it for us. So just give up your personality, give up your agency, and let this guy do it for you.
Yeah.
And a lot of
And
people fell for it.
yeah, and when we go back to his TV show, The Apprentice, obviously he was a guy, a really tough, strong, do it kind of manager who was looking for competent people, and he'd fire those that were not. And it was, I can see why so many people must have loved that show. They saw him then beating up on who? Bureaucratic figures. And then you get, in my opinion, and maybe you want to comment on this too, all those years of becoming a real estate mogul. Uh, this guy was a deal maker, and he wrote the book, The Art of the Deal, and it was in New York City, and he became rich over and over again. And so this this picture of Trump emerging as a TV personality, everybody knew who Donald Trump was, and then as this big, powerful real estate mogul uh, who could create all kinds of wonderful things just by saying so. This has to be part of, Eric. I wonder if it's part of a plan to have groomed him all along for where he is today.
Well, consider the fact that he was excoriated by the Democratic Party, and people have some grudges against the Democratic Party. So when the Democrats, kind of pick on him, I mean, Hillary Clinton thought we're gonna elevate Donald Trump because we think that he's so bad that people won't like him, and it backfired. So was this a deliberate attempt to push him aside or use him to elevate Hillary Clinton? Or was it, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Their idea, it backfired on them. It elevated him as a personality instead of shoving him aside in favor of the DNC, which is completely corrupt. Look, they succeeded with Bernie Sanders, but Bernie Sanders is too nice. You know, he succumbed to that. Donald Trump, he's like, fight like that. So he has a personality that would be suitable for a personality cult.
and when you think about how he ran his campaign, he was doing whistle stop uh, speeches all around the country, especially in areas where, I don't know, they were all red, they were all Republican, they were all tremendously conservative. I mean, tens of thousands of people showing up for these rallies, and he's wearing that damn red hat and MAGA, Make America Great Again, and uh, coming out with, like you said, everything we have to do, get rid of all, clean the swamp, get rid of all these horrible people that are dragging this country down. Uh, and so I think, to me, Eric, that was all kind of a culmination of the Apprentice. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, so you agree? I mean, it's like, man, this like was made in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm. Well, Chris Hedges has pointed out that our whole political process is spectacle anyway. People are living it's the matrix where people are living in a manufactured reality. We've known anybody who has any critical thinking can see how the public is completely manipulated.
Well, and
Top.
you and I have talked about this, and you mentioned it, a declining empire. Uh, when I look at what's happening in the country of my birth, I do not refer to the government and haven't for many years as my government. It's not my government. But as I observe from afar, uh, what I'm seeing is a total collapse, social, economic, political, cultural, religious, and moral. And the problem I see, Eric, is that the vast majority of American people obviously are not feeling the collapse yet. They're not feeling the economic pain. And, uh, the stadiums of all kinds are filled. This, this crazy UFC, these fighting things, cage fighting, you know, packed in with people, and those tickets are not cheap. Uh, and so this is really concerning for me. I mean, looking at it from afar, like you and I, we can see that it's an empire in decline. 37, $38 trillion debt. It increases every 4 months by $1 trillion. And and then we'll get to Trump. But on the global stage, it's really an embarrassment. Anyway, I want to let you get back to to your thesis here because it's really fascinating. Um, this personality cult and a person who has that charisma and that power um, really demands loyalty. And and I know you're going to talk about the psychology of yes men. So I want you to
Mhm.
pick it up from there.
Well, it's a kind of paradox because on the one hand, Donald Trump presents himself as demanding loyalty, as we saw. I mean, the grossest example of that was that the meeting with the generals. But and who does he surround himself with? Well, they're on the one hand they are yes men, but on the other hand, he's also manipulated by them. So it's a kind of a confusing situation. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
In other words,
yeah, I do. I do. But
he talks John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, and I'm getting rid of those guys. And who does he put in? Mark Rubio and Hegseth is he's a classic follower of a cult leader.
yeah,
Look
and
at
if you
look at the way.
see you see the tattoos on his body, uh, obviously this is kind of a creepy guy. Uh, but in terms of yes men, I mean, Eric, from my perspective, I see this exist in all levels of government and in corporate life anywhere in the world. To get ahead, you basically kiss, you know what, and you say yes. You go along with it to climb the ladder. Do you think this is part of the psychology as well? I think so.
um, the there's a basic kind of a cultural bias where if you don't buy into the narrative, and Donald Trump obviously has a narrative, I'm the greatest. I stopped wars. I the greatest economy. Blah blah blah. And in order to advance yourself in that system, you say, yeah, he's great, he's great. So you have a substantial part of the population, and especially the military, because he does have this position of commander in chief. He does have the power to fire people. So, and these guys are all corrupt. They're just looking for a cushy job, and then after they retire, they're going to get a job, selling weapons through an arms dealer, an weapons company. So they're willing to do anything, to get ahead. Who's a perfect example of that actually was Colin Powell.
Oof.
Uh, Colin Powell was a Colin Powell was a major in Vietnam, and when the My Lai massacre came out, he helped cover it up because his career demanded that he not tell the truth about it. And then when he was Secretary of State under Bush, he propagated that lie about the weapons of mass destruction. So you have the system itself demands this kind of loyalty. And I know about you, but when I was in business, um, if you went against the dominant narrative, you are marginalized. So, and when you have somebody with personality like Trump, that you're creating a culture which demands a shutdown of critical thinking and just doing what you're told and saying yes.
Yeah, that's the way you climb the ladder. I hate to think that all of those 800 or so military commanders are corrupt. I God, I can only hope that there's some of them that take their oath to the Constitution seriously, and I mean, Eric, when you think about it, all of these guys could retire comfortably right now. They don't need to take this uh, BS. They don't need to go back to theaters of war and risk certainly the lives of all those millions of men and women under them, but even their own lives, although most of them are probably pretty far away from the conflict. But God, I hope if there's any chance of this country surviving, there are some of those commanders who are good and who are honest and who believe in in defending this country against evils from abroad and within. And Eric, I think what we're talking about right now is this country, the United States, needs to be defended against the evil within.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, both people that I listen to, when I choose influencers, I listen to certain people and I give them more credibility than others. So Larry Johnson is a former CIA operative. He saw what was going on. He quit, and now he's one of the best voices as far as what's going on. He was very, very disappointed, to say the least, with the fact that people didn't walk out. And Ray McGovern, who also was a great CIA officer and high integrity, and Lawrence Wilkerson, who was a colonel, and they were all very upset by the fact that nobody walked out. So, um, it raises questions about when Donald Trump, you know, gets to the point of absolute desperation, and he's going to put his finger on the button, and he calls the general and he says, "Press that button." Are they going to do it or not?
Yeah, that it's a big question. Talking about these generals, and you mentioned some people who uh, were formerly government employees. Uh, uh, Ray McGovern amongst them, a good friend of mine. John Kiriakou is another one who blew the whistle, went to jail. Uh, he's been on my show before, and I've been in contact with him recently. He's out of the country for a while, but he's going to come back on the show probably in another month. And then you get Douglas McGregor, another one who incredibly
Mhm.
brilliant man, and many other former generals and colonels and lieutenant colonels have been appearing on a lot of shows, alt media shows. They're all condemning it, and all of them. I hope they're getting through to some of them, and people that they knew and people that they were superior to, commanders of these people as they were coming up the ranks. I hope they can get through to some of them. And
Well, yeah, I like to address that point because the when you're in that kind of that cult, you're in a culture, whether it's a corporation or in the military, you are completely immersed in it. That's all you think about. That's all you know. And Congress is the same way. They're inundated with false information. I think it was Elizabeth Murray talked about this when she was in the CIA. Everybody agreed Osama bin Laden did 9/11. She's saying, wait a second here, but there's a culture that encourages conformity. But once people step out of that culture, with General Smedley Butler being maybe the most prime example of that, former, two-time Congressional Medal of Honor winner, and he got out and he said, while I was in the military, I kind of thought something wasn't quite right, and I had to. Once I was out of it, then I figured out what was really going on. So there's probably a lot of that phenomenon going on now, where you have the military people who have left, and once they're out of it, they get this perspective, and they say, "Oh, now we understand because we can see it from a broader perspective. We're not inside the bubble." So
Yeah.
if they can get to their officers who are still inside, maybe they can have a positive impact.
I'm hoping that there's a Smedley Butler out there somewhere. Uh, they tried to use him to orchestrate a coup, and he smelled a rat and he walked away from it. But maybe what we need right now is a Smedley Butler within the ranks who can maybe save this country from this desperate situation that we're in. All right, let's move ahead, Eric. Um, we've been talking about the personality cult and focusing especially on Donald Trump and all of his mannerisms. And before we end this, I want to come back to Trump and kind of analyze his most recent behavior, disconnected speeches, whatever you want to call them. Uh, but let's get to the real serious part as we're talking about these generals. Um, During that speech, that event where Hegseth spoke and Trump, they talked about, and Trump, when he went before the United Nations, we're the greatest military, most powerful military in the entire world. Uh, and then you had Hegseth basically saying we need to be a lethal fighting force, and we are the most powerful military in the entire world. But he contradicts himself by saying you're all fat, okay? And you got all this wokeism stuff, and you got to have women meeting male standards. I mean, just freaking insane. I couldn't believe this thing. I was disgusted. If I wanted to throw up. But what we're talking about now is the military. We were talking about loyalty and we were talking about yes men. It exists in everywhere, in business, in politics, and in the military. Uh, what Trump and Hegseth manifested was this overconfidence in the might of American military. Eric, we can go back to the end of World War II and trace it till today. Uh, totally unfounded. What are your thoughts?
Well, this is exactly right, and I go back to the Hitler analogy, where Hitler thought that he could take out the Soviet Union. He invaded with a huge military, you know, um, 5 million people or something, and he was absolutely convinced that he could take down the Soviet Union, and he couldn't. And it finally reached the point after it was quite clear that he was going to lose, that he, that some of the generals, plotted against him. But we're not quite at that point yet, because we haven't experienced serious military reversals. So the thing that concerns me, or what I'm wondering what's about to happen, is that the United States has this incredible overestimation of its own capabilities, and they have a bipolar disorder, because on the one hand, we're weak, you guys are fat and weak and so on, but the other, we're the strongest in the world. So they have it's a kind of fragmented consciousness, where they're holding two thoughts that contradict each other.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, when you look back at the history, the United States has not won a single conflict. I'm saying conflict. I'm not saying war now, but a single conflict since the end of World War II. Vietnam, classic. Afghanistan, after 20 years, tucking tail and running like crazy. The similarities between the final days in Hanoi and leaving Afghanistan, it's like one was on the top of a government building with helicopters taking off. The other is huge cargo planes going down the runway with people hanging onto it, just trying to get out of there. I mean, it's hard to believe that we're seeing that we saw the same thing. And
Right.
and now I want to bring
But
this
I want to,
conversation.
but
Go ahead.
I want to say that in terms of World War II, we didn't even win World War II.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Well,
know, said we won world. No, you won. You defeated 20% of the Wehrmacht. The Soviet Union defeated 80% of the Wehrmacht, and yet you take the credit. So you see, they have this inflated view. We defeated Saddam. Saddam. Yeah, that's great. We defeated Saddam. Well, you didn't defeat General Giap of Vietnam. You didn't defeat the Chinese peasant army in the Korean War. You didn't defeat the Afghans, and so on and so forth. But they have this. They're a legend in their own mind, and this is very precarious because they're going to find out. I say they're cruising for a bruising. They think that they're so great, and they have no idea who they don't know their adversary. They don't understand. They overestimate their own capability. They don't even know who they are. They don't understand their adversaries. And when that reality hits, it's going to be really tough.
well, the reality has already hit, Eric. Let's uh, let's bring it up to the present day. Uh, I've been watching, and so have you, from afar. Well, you've been here as well, but the conflict in Ukraine. Uh, it's obvious to any objective person who is not ideologically conflicted that NATO has had its butt whipped in Ukraine. All of their
Mm-hmm.
advanced weapons, yes, they now are striking deeper into Russia. It will not change the outcome. Minor discomfort for the Russian people and the Russian Federation, but NATO is obviously been shown for what it is, a paper tiger. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
Trump called Russia a couple of weeks ago. And then for anybody who has any sense in their head, they have to know that this is not a war, a proxy war of using Ukraine against Russia. This is a direct, let's face it, a direct war funded, organized, promoted, uh, with layers and layers of propaganda by the United States of America. So when you look at what's happened, it's a horrendous embarrassment and a complete failure for the United States of America. NATO is simply its tool. And
Mm-hmm.
and Eric, uh, we're talking
But
about.
you see, they're in denial about it, though. That's the issue, because they could have solved this. They could have said, "You're right. We're out of here." Donald Trump said, "We're going to solve this problem." All he has to do is say, "General, whoever's in charge, pull the guys out." That's all he had to do, and it would have been over. But he's in denial, so that's part of his cult. Like he believes himself. He believes his own lies. You see.
Yeah, and to admit the opposite is a failure. It's a complete.
Cannot.
Yeah, it's a complete destruction of his own personality, his own cult. You can't come to
Mhm.
accept that. Uh, but it's obvious to anybody. Uh, Now, I was talking about current conflicts, but we didn't name them. Uh, you've named them in your blog, your video blog, uh, where we bombed Iran. We're supporting Israel to the hilt. Uh, we are we've labeled China as the number one enemy, and we want to maybe cut back in Europe and this war against Ukraine to pivot our resources towards China. Uh, and then there's North Korea, who is one of our enemies. It's obvious. And then, Eric, at the same time, we're declaring war. Let's face it, on Venezuela. And Trump is committing murder when he orders those boats, supposedly with drugs, and those boats can only get so far. They can't get to Florida. They can't get to the mainland. These are people that are probably fleeing and hoping somehow they can escape. Uh, it's a war on 4 or 5 fronts that the United States is actually looking today. Eric, talk about hubris.
Well, it's a combination of both hubris and desperation. They're flailing around. They're so desperate. He's see, Trump is desperate to win. That's all he can think about is winning. He doesn't care about reputation. He doesn't care about anything. All he cares about is winning. And if he can't win Ukraine, oh, let's pick on Venezuela, you know. So I think that's the real purpose of Venezuela, is that he thinks they're easy picking. He probably is a little more concerned about Iran, and you know he places ridiculous conditions on Iran. You're not gonna enrich uranium. You're going to get rid of your missiles, disarm completely so that we can defeat you because we know you're too powerful for us. And yet he has the I don't even know the adjective to describe how does he think he can get away with that? You know, he and the same thing he pulled with Putin. I'm going to get Putin, and he's going to be convinced through the force of my powerful personality to do what I tell him to do. This is he's you know he's deranged.
Yeah. And uh, it shouldn't be any surprise, excuse me, any surprise to anybody that the word N, as in nuclear, uh, has been on the lips of NATO and the EU leadership in Brussels. And UK is not in the EU or Brussels, but Starmer, with Macron, with Merz now, with Ursula von der Leyen, all of these creepy people preparing their people for war, telling them to hoard food, water, uh, uh, petroleum, gas, get generators, buy candles. Uh, and the word nuclear is coming up all the time. And they're blaming Putin because Putin has said that if you cross our line, if you attack Russia, and Lukashenko in Belarus said this, and Medvedev has been saying it all along, we will hit you with everything we have, and that means nuclear. Eric, I made a film in 2016. No, it was actually earlier than that, 30 Seconds to Midnight, where that's the reason I came to Russia. Yeah, it was 2016, because I had to find out for myself what Russia was really like, what these evil people were really like. And to finish that film, which was about the threat, and what I was really worried about it then, of a nuclear war between Russia and the United States. The Bureau of Atomic Scientists had put the doomsday clock, Armageddon, nuclear war, at 3.5 minutes to midnight. And I titled my film, we're at 30 seconds to midnight. Eric, I am more concerned and afraid today that a nuclear accident could happen because of all the rhetoric, the bellicose, angry, accusatory language towards Russia, demonizing of Russia. Uh, if it's not by design, by some crazy Dr. Strangelove, uh, it it most likely could come because of an accident, because we're in such close proximity to each other in direct warfare, and I think it's direct already. We're already in World War III. It just hasn't fully erupted. I'm more concerned today that this could be the end of the human experiment. Your
Mm.
thoughts
Well,
on how dangerously close we are because of this hubris, this estimation of our power has got us close to nuclear war. I don't know. Do you agree?
absolutely. Just look at these are data points. Um, there was an INF treaty that was negotiated because in the early 1980s, Reagan put missiles right on in Germany, and they were pointed at the Soviet Union. Soviet Union had missiles pointed at Europe, and the people in Europe and the United States launched a freeze movement or an anti-nuclear movement that said we stop this. So they created a treaty, the INF treaty. Trump trashed that treaty. He trashed the Open Skies Treaty. Um, George Bush earlier had trashed the ABM Treaty. And now we have the START Treaty, which is expiring in February. Russia said, why don't we continue it for a year so that we can, renegotiate it because it's supposed to end in February. And he hasn't heard back from them. Meanwhile, the United States has put nuclear weapons into England. They have them probably in Turkey. They have them in Germany. They have them in, I think, Italy and the Netherlands. So we're in effect in a Cuban Missile Crisis right now, and nobody's talking about it.
Yeah. You're talking about all those treaties. The United States unilaterally pulled out of those treaties, not Russia. They didn't even talk about
Right.
it. They just pulled them out. And uh, the thing that bothers me about Trump, uh, he's consistently lied that Ukraine was Joe Biden's war. Joe Biden was so bad, so terrible, so it wouldn't have happened under my regime. Hey, in his first administration, he sent missiles, he sent weapons, he sent money to Ukraine. Are you kidding me? I mean, people can't see that. It's a matter of what happened to historical memory. And I'm not talking ancient history, I'm talking 2020. I mean, it's really scary what this person is doing and how he's being used. Uh,
Well, the thing is one of the big psychological. This gets into mass psychology because I mentioned we talk about Trump as a phenomenon as a personality cult, but the United States itself collectively has a personality cult. We are innocent. We are the good guys. We're protecting freedom and democracy, and when we'll bomb you to give you freedom and democracy because we're good. So they're incapable of introspection. They're incapable of critical thinking. Most Americans are in that position, and Donald Trump is the epitome of it. Look at they voted for him. You know, I mean, you and I look at him. I mean, even people whom we respect, they said, well, Biden is senile, blah blah blah. We should go for Trump. I'm thinking, look at the guy. Look at his personality. He is psychologically and intellectually incapable of being a decent leader. Why are you going for it? Because you're desperate and you're not using your critical thinking. So there we are.
yeah, and the power of cult is enormous. With Jim Jones, for example, getting those 300 people to drink cyanide laced Kool-Aid. Uh,
900.
oh,
900.
pardon me, the numbers are fading away here, but 900 committed suicide altogether. Uh, the power of cult in a cultic figure is really enormous. And one has to admit that Trump has tremendous power over a lot of people. Eric, however, his approval rating is at 40% and it's falling. And
Mhm.
there's some hope in this that the other 60%, some of those have got to be those people who voted for him because, well, maybe he could do some good things, and I like some of this, but the other choice was Kamala Harris, and she just was not acceptable as a personality. She had
Mhm.
no charisma, no power. So the only choice for a lot of people was Trump, the lesser of two evils, been the history of American elections forever. And so when you see his approval rating going down and at 40%, and one poll had him at 38%, those people who voted for him were not MAGA people. They were those people who were hopeful. And now, when they're questioned, they're expressing their dissatisfaction with what they've seen him do in the last 8 months. And what he's done in the last 8 months has been horrific for anybody who is not captivated and under the spell of this Donald Trump cult. Now, Eric, um, I want to finish on this note because I know you and I are both in agreement. And in the beginning of the show, you talked about it's the system that's at fault, and the system is what is corrupt. Uh, I want to be more specific, and I'm going to throw it to you. We're putting all of the blame and onus on Donald Trump. I don't believe Donald Trump for 1 second is in power. He's a tool. He's a manager of these powerful forces, powerful individuals who are very far away. And I think this is the case in most of the countries in Europe. You look at the leadership there, it's not leadership. These are all just managers of a plan that most people can't see because they're either too overwhelmed, too confused, or cannot, as you say, think critically. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I kind of I like 80% agree with it. It's not entirely clear to me that there is a cabal that is, there's like three people sitting in a room and saying, okay, we agree, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to get our minions around us, and they're going to tell other people what to do, and then they're going to tell their people what to do, and they're going to get the media people to tell them what to do. Um, it's hard to say whether, from my perspective, whether there's an actual, I know, and maybe we may disagree on this, and people obviously have other views, but it seems to me like there's a zeitgeist that is going on, and the zeitgeist is not based on specific people. It's a it's like a mindset that has afflicted Western civilization that is kind of directing it in towards this very self-destructive path that we're on. That's kind of my view on it.
Well, Eric, I want to thank you for this animated discussion. I really enjoyed it. I said in the beginning that when I read your blog, listened to your blog, that I had to have you on as soon as possible, and it got me fired up. And I think I haven't shown this kind of emotion too many times before. So thanks for getting me riled up.
Well,
Always good to see you.
right. Well, Regis, don't get too riled up because that's not so. We have to. I have a saying: calm the mind and discern the real. If we're too emotional, we can lose perspective. We have to just look at things clearly and critically, and then make our decisions.